Welcome to I Party With Your Mama, your new favorite podcast. Here's your host, Jesse Daly. Don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You don't want to miss this shit.
I am joined today with Sammy Daly. I'm so happy that you're on the show.
Another daily.
Another Daily.
There's no end to them.
So where are you at right now?
I'm in my hair studio, which is actually in the bathroom of my home. But I have a sink and mirrors and all my equipment around, sitting around here.
Awesome. So your clients come there?
Yes, they do. And I don't have that many. I have about 7 friends of mine that I do. And they just call me, like a couple days before. One of them is flight attendant, and she comes in and out. And so I just do basically people that I go out to lunch with and things like that. I don't have a big, I tell them, don't tell anybody or I'll have to kill you.
Don't spread the word.
No, opposite of what you would normally say. Tell all your friends. No, don't tell anyone.
Don't tell your friends or we're not friends.
Yes. So that's where I'm at, and it's pretty quiet in here, and it's a nice day out today, and I was going to do it outside, but it just seemed like it was getting too hot.
Oh,
Also,
yeah.
the neighbor is building a house next door. Every once in a while, there's some horrendous kind of noise going on. You never know what's going to happen.
That repeated sort of banging and
Like
crashing.
jackhammering noise or whatever, and a big cement truck backing up. Beep, beep, beep.
I call that the sounds of OB.
Yeah.
It's
That's
so
true.
noisy here.
It is noisy there, and it wasn't that way when I was growing up in the 50s.
I know. So were you born here?
I was.
You were.
I
So
was
you are
born here
native.
at Mercy Hospital because I was supposed to be born at Navy Hospital, but they were full, the OB department. There were so many babies being born then, it's a baby boom. And so they farmed some of the Navy wives out to Mercy Hospital, which I think is in North Park.
We lived there for a second.
Yeah, I
in
know
North
it.
Park. I wish we would have stayed because it's so great
Yes,
now.
I know.
It's really
It's
cool. It was not when we were
real
here.
trendy and lots of neat things going on there, I think. And it's always been kind of edgy.
Yeah, it was always cool, but the coolness was so spread out. Like
Yeah.
having a baby, the walkability was just
Yeah.
non-existent, and I couldn't do it coming from Seattle.
Well, I know the walkability in Seattle is tremendous.
Yeah, if I had to lug a baby in a car, I was like, this is not the place for me.
Yeah, putting them in a car seat and all that, forget about it. But yeah, you could have got established out there anyway.
I know, but I love being an OB. I don't think there's a lateral move from here. It's just
I don't know that there is either, but the horrendous expense that they've put on people now.
it's
I mean,
ridiculous.
it was a whole different world growing up there. It was Navy families and working people. My dad was a carpenter. He had been in the Navy, of course, during the war and everything. He was in the Seabees where they build things. They built. Actually, he came out here in Arkansas and worked on the dam. It's one of the world's largest concrete reservoir dams, and it's a mile from me.
Well, that's full circle.
Yes, isn't it? I can look at that dam every time I go fishing because like the catch and release section is right in front of that dam. And my dad had all kinds of stories about the dam and all the fun they had working there. But this is not party with your dad, it's party with your mom. And my mom refused to come out here while he was working on that.
Well,
so,
she's a
yeah.
smart lady.
You think that it's people say, oh, there's no good restaurants and blah, blah, blah. My God, it's a paradise on earth compared to what it was back then. There was nothing here.
I'm sure.
A friend of mine told me, who's lived here her whole life, that they just went wild with joy when they got a McDonald's.
Lined up around the block.
I said, you guys should have Jack in the Box.
Yeah.
We went wild with joy over those tacos. And I still get them every time I go near a Jack in the Box. I get tacos. It's my home food.
People are like that with In-N-Out.
Yes, that's right. For the time, it was in and out. Yeah. And so my mom was born in 1920 in Springfield, Missouri,
Wow.
which is not too far from here. It's about a 2.5 hour ride, and that's where our airport is, or Little Rock.
Are you that far away from the airport?
Yeah, we are.
Can't imagine.
On a good day, you could probably get to the one in Little Rock in 2 hours.
I can get to ours in like 9 minutes.
But yeah, planes go right over your head, as they always have.
Sure do. All of our citrus trees are like covered in black stuff. And
Yeah,
I'm like, that's jet fuel.
that's parakeet shit from my mother's parakeets.
Yeah, that's right. I wonder if they're relatives.
We had those parakeets as a side hustle because my mom didn't work, and she and I did a lot of things like that. We made fuchsia baskets. My dad would make the basket for us, and we'd put cuttings in it, nurture it, and then sell them to people.
What's a
with
fuchsia basket?
Fuchsias are the red and orange pendulous upside down hanging flowers. Hummingbirds really love them.
Oh, yeah.
And they used to put them in redwood baskets, and we had all kinds of strips of wood that he would get from his jobs, and he would make us these sort of crisscross baskets. You then line with moss and soil and put cuttings in, and hang it up under the lath house in the shade. And then, before about midsummer, they would be blooming, and you could sell them for $5, which was big money in those days because we only got $1 for a parakeet.
We got to talk about the birds. The fuchsia baskets, they're like growing flowers that you would just, people would buy and hang.
And they take, you can make cuttings of them easily. In other words, you can cut a piece off the plant, stick it in that medium I just spoke of in a basket, and keep it in the shade and keep it watered, and it'll take off and root in this basket. And then they quickly make a little flowering plant, and in probably 4 or 5 months, they're a big full plant. It's hanging over the side of the basket, and flowers are blooming. There's all different kinds of fuchsia.
That's really cool.
But yeah, we did that, and also we did the birds. My dad built us an aviary, big, huge aviary. We had like 50 parakeets pretty much all the time. And the way that they all got loose is once in a while they would escape. But at the end of the time when we weren't going to raise parakeets anymore, I was getting my own interest in school and things like that. And I didn't have time because I'm the one who cleaned the parakeet cages and nurtured the nesting boxes.
Starting as a kid, then you got to an age where you're like, this is
I was
not
crazy
for me.
about it when I was like 7 years old.
Oh, I'm sure Elvis would love that job.
Oh, yes. It was great, too. And I would have to tame the little baby parakeets because they fledge in 21 days. So they come out of the nesting box, and you're waiting there with your little finger out, get on your finger, and then you talk to them. And, budgies, as we called them then, can talk, especially the male.
Really?
Mm-hmm. They can repeat words, and not as good probably as a parrot, but pretty good.
Similar.
Yeah, they recognize you, and they'll say, hello, hello.
How did you guys get into that? Was your mom just thinking of ways to make money while being at home raising you?
Yep. That's what it was, basically, is what they now call a side hustle. We just called, extra income that we would do. And parakeets are really easy to breed, and they just do by themselves. You don't have to interfere. They form pairs, and we would keep the bonded pairs together, and then as the little babies got older, we would sell them and sometimes trade with another lady in OB who had parakeets. That way we would have different bloodline, and they wouldn't be all related.
They wouldn't have like 2 heads eventually.
Well, they've spent a lot more money in that. Then at the end of that time, when she wanted to get out of that, she just opened the door to the aviary and they flew out. And that's how they got in your trees.
Yeah, that's right.
That and other people did the same thing too, you
When
know.
we're walking around with the dogs now, I'll be like, "Look, there's grandma's birds."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we had all different beautiful varieties. The normal variety, I think, really is the prettiest. And they're green or blue with black bars across them. You know, they have little markings on their head, and they'd be bright blue and bright green. Green, I think, is the original color. And then we had fancies. That's albinos, pastels. They'd be real pale yellow, have pink eyes. They're a
Wow.
little bit less hardy. You know, they don't. You know, parakeets don't like to be cold, and we had drop cloths on the aviary if it was going to be chilly at night, and we would have a brooder lamp. You know, you have for chickens. We would plug that brooder lamp in because they don't like cold weather, and not that it's cold in OB, but it's colder than like Australia where they came from.
Was that where they originated from?
I think it is.
Yeah, I was just reading Ione Skye's memoir. Remember from Say Anything, that actress? And
Yes.
they had two parakeets, and the heat went out one night, and she said that her mom and her stepdad like got the kids together around the fireplace, but they forgot the bird cage, and in the morning they were
Yeah.
parakeet popsicles.
Yeah, they'll just keel over and be upside down if they're cold. And I mean, you lose a few that way during the winter. If it's raining for a long time, they don't like to be wet. You got to have a dry place, constantly change the bedding material out. And it's a job. It's not
Yeah, it's
that
a lot of work
easy.
for
Yeah,
$1 a bird.
it's a lot. It's a lot of work. Yeah. I think at the end of the time we were getting $2, and that would be the most that you would pay for them. And I was in a pet store. I don't know. It was probably several years ago now, and the parakeets were $30 a piece. Yes, but we used to just like if they would escape from the person who bought them, then they would come back, and I just put them on my finger and put them right back in the aviary because they were tame. That was their home.
They know where
then
to go to keep warm.
we'd wait a while, and they didn't call and say my parakeet escaped. We just sold that bird to somebody else. So, you know, there's a certain amount of reuse of the birds.
Till the bird finds its forever home.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of people, we always would encourage them to get two because they don't like to be by themselves. So unless you have another type of bird like a canary, they get along pretty good with a canary. But they don't like to just be a bird by themselves. They get lonely, and people
Like
don't spend enough
chickens.
time with them. Yeah, they need a flock.
Yep.
But we would try to get people to buy two because they wouldn't be happy. They really wouldn't be happy otherwise.
Did you go all through school here in San Diego?
Yes,
Were you in OB the whole time?
I lived in OB till I was 18. I got a scholarship and went to UCSD for 2 years. And at that time, then my parents were having one of their numerous split ups, and they didn't have any money to give me for food or anything extra. So I had different jobs, of course, and I got a chance to go to beauty school out there. A friend of mine was already done and was making a ton of money. Like she was making $100 a week in tips, and I was like, "Oh my God,
You're
I
like,
have
what
to
am
do
I
this."
doing in school?
Because my mom always did people's hair. It's another sort of a side hobby she had is cutting people's hair, and she would put color on them too. If they wanted to color, they would go pick out something at the drugstore and go back to the house and put color on. She was just an amateur hairstylist, but she made money that way. So I knew
She's
there was money.
resourceful. She was very resourceful.
She would do anything to avoid getting a job.
Like me.
She just did not want to work outside. So she did that. And let's see, what else did she do? Well, you know, she was very artistic. and she painted everything. My dad said if it stands still, if the cat would stand still, she would paint it. But she did. She was very artsy, and she did a lot of drawings of Disney characters.
Did she do like furniture and stuff, or like
Yep,
on
furniture.
canvas?
Yep, furniture, murals on the bedroom walls of kids. Like go to their house with paints and paint the seven dwarfs marching around their headboard, that kind of thing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, she was very much better artist than I am, and I dabble in artsy things. Like I just painted a chair, Adirondack chair, to look like a brown trout. In other words, the skin of a brown trout. I have to send you a picture of it.
Yeah.
And my mom painted a picture. First, I had Disney characters too. I had Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella. They just had the old fashioned one then. They didn't have Moana and all those things. She would have loved that. She would have really loved it. But then after I got a little older, like almost a teenager, she painted a mural. I didn't even know she was doing it. I came home from school and she painted a Black Panther drinking water in a jungle scene, and it's like looking at you. It's a picture. It's an art picture that people. I know where she got the idea. Was somebody had one painted on velvet from Tijuana, and she painted it that way with glowing eyes, and it was drinking water, and there was a reflection in the pool of water of the.
I've totally seen those velvet paintings.
That's right. That's exactly where she got it, and it was huge on my bedroom wall, probably 10 by 10 feet. And people, when my friends would come over, they'd be like, wow, your mom painted that? And so she got a lot of press from that. Those kids' mothers called up and said, hey, would you paint something on, like she painted beautiful carousel horses. She would paint carousel horses with, all the trims on them and on a pole, that kind of thing.
So when you went to school, what were you doing with your life then?
I was working. You would have to work off your debt for beauty school by being an apprentice for a year, which I was at Vidal Sassoon in Santa Monica. Ooh. It's right up the street from the Ivy.
Yep.
The restaurant. He used to take us there for lunch.
Vidal Sassoon, if you don't look good, we don't look good.
Yes, Vidal Sassoon.
I remember those commercials.
Yes.
I always wanted that like real, like tight bob.
Yes. He invented that very thing, the stack bob and the really smooth look.
Yep.
There was a model. Her name was Vera. No, it's not Vera. It's, oh, shoot. I just thought of it the other day, but I can't think of it now. But she was a famous model Asian girl. Anyhow, she had beautiful, shiny black hair, and he cut these really neat bangs and just straight bob, and she, of course, like 6 foot tall and weighed 100 pounds or something. That's kind of what broke him into the public domain and then he started selling all these products.
Yeah, that's where the money comes.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah,
that's where the money is.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, he was a famous hairdresser at the time and did a lot of celebrities. In fact, his wife's name was Beverly, and she was at the salon all the time at the school. And they were separated, even though they worked together. She was dating Dean Martin. I probably shouldn't even say this because Dean Martin was married, of course. But I imagine even his kids are as old as I am.
Wow.
I don't know, so. But yeah.
You're spilling the tea on Dean Martin. I love it. I was just talking about Dean Martin last night.
I love Dean Martin.
Me
He's
too.
Fabulous. And he was so funny and always so nice to the girls there. He didn't make any, rude comments or suggestive or, try to be a gross old man too.
So he would come in to the school?
Yeah. And he came in and got his hair cut, and Vidal did it, and he had nice hair, He had beautiful hair.
Did.
And he would arrive in some kind of really cool sports car, and he'd park it right out in front of the salon. And everybody'd run out there and look inside. And of course, nobody had a phone or camera or anything, so couldn't take any pictures. Would have been great, though. I would have pictures of Dean Martin.
For sure. That is so cool.
Yeah. Well, but my mom, she was a real, I don't know, just so fast and busy all the time. She never sat still. She was always doing something, either art, working in the yard. She didn't really like to cook, but she liked to bake. And she baked a lot of cakes, and so do I. And she didn't like to cook like dinner, like pork chops and potatoes and so on. And that's what my dad wanted to eat. But a lot of times she would make something, and if we would say, "Oh, these pork chops are really tough," something like that, she would just grab the plate like mid bite, and she would open the screen door and pitch the food out to my dog. My dog is waiting outside the screen door just expectantly because she knows that there's going to be something coming out.
Right. Someone's
Probably.
going to say something. I'm going to get my
Someone's
dinner.
gonna say, somebody say something about the dinner, and she would just throw it right out and then just put the plate back down.
And then you just have to have cake for
We'd
dinner.
just sit there. Yeah. We would have cake. We didn't say much, but once in a while my Aunt Shirley would eat with us. She lived in the guest house, which used to be behind that house on Saratoga. And I think now it's just a garage, which it probably started out being a garage or a carriage house or something like that. But that's where she lived, so she didn't have a kitchen, and she would come and eat with us. And she wasn't quite as conditioned to not commenting on the food. And she would often get her food thrown out the back door.
If your friends came over, you would have to be like, "Oh, hold on a
Yeah.
second.
I
Don't
would
say
tell them now,
anything."
do not say anything about the food or it won't be there anymore.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah. She was a little tiny woman, never weighed more than 100 pounds, and was about 5 foot tall and had red hair, which she ended up, as her hair started to fade, as she got a little bit older, she would put henna packs on it, which is what they had to make red hair in those days. Yeah, you didn't necessarily buy color. You had a henna pack. It's a vegetable dye,
Hmm.
and it only came in red. Now it comes in lots of colors. But she'd put that on, and her hair would be just bright red in the sun. People would always comment about how beautiful her hair was.
She's just a little tiny thing coming with her hot
Yeah.
red hair.
Yeah, really. I mean, she wore about a size 5 and 7 probably her whole life. And she smoked Marlboros. She smoked Marlboros like they were going out of style. And she lived to be 84 anyway, which is pretty amazing. You know that Marlboros used to have a swag shop where you saved up the carton, or the pack had a little code on the bottom, and you saved those up and mailed them all in to. There was a catalog, and you mailed them into Philip Morris, and they would send you sleeping bags, jackets, T-shirts, coasters, bar towels. I can't even ashtrays. Well, she had all of that stuff. Everything that you could get just about out of the Marlboro catalog.
I could just imagine your room with the panther on the wall and a marble
Yeah.
blanket.
And of course, we were on the lookout all the time to get, let's say somebody was foolish enough to throw away an empty carton or package of Marlboros. Well, there'd be a war. Kids would be fighting over them in the street because everybody's parents were sending those Marlboros, and Winston's, I think, did the same thing.
Like box tops at school, the kids used to,
Yeah.
collect box tops.
Yes.
I don't know if we really got anything, but they used
Yeah,
to save
I
them.
think they did have. I don't know what they got for those box tops actually, but there's a catalog for Marlboro stuff, and it had quite a few things in it, and then you could get something for like 20 or 40 box tops of course Marlboros could be either a soft pack or a box. It could be a little cardboard box. That was the best kind. It had the most points. They had a certain amount of points. And you would go through the catalog and pick out shit.
Around the
Isn't that,
neighborhood collecting cigarette
yeah,
boxes.
going through
They
the
should do that
trash.
again because, there'd
They
be
should.
less litter.
That's right, because there was no cigarette packs there'd be cigarette butts, but there wouldn't be any cigarette packs.
Right.
Because everybody was into that couponing and getting
When you
prizes and
get
everything.
something. Yeah, when you get
Yeah,
something.
you get something.
It's like recycling. When I lived in Michigan for a minute, if you would have a party at your house and people would, bring their own beer or whatever, they would
Oh,
have
yeah.
to leave the cans and bottles because if it was
Yes.
your house, then the next day you went and turned it in and you got like 10 cents for every bottle or can.
Oh,
If
yeah,
you
we
had a
used
pretty
to.
good party, you can make like $50.
Well, yeah, you could turn in pop bottles too. When I was growing up, you could turn those in for 5 or 10 cents, depending on what they were. But there used to be a Chinese grocer on the corner. I think it was on, might have been Cape May and Bacon, somewhere
Mhm.
right around there. It was a little grocery store, and my mother would send me over there all the time to buy cigarettes. And I would just go in there, and the little Chinese man, I would put the money up there and say 2 packs of Marlboros, and he would just put them out there and take the money. I'm 8 years old.
My God, that's so funny. You didn't even need a note like I did. I used to get them from the gas station for my mom, but she would send me with a note.
Yeah. I think my mom sent a note the first time. I said, my mom wants Marlboros.
He's like, okie dokie, here you
Yep,
go.
here you go. No problem. And then I'd bring bottles and turn those in and get money too. So
You're like 2 packs of Marlboros and this lollipop.
I've stunted my growth. I'm actually 21. But it was a different world then. And of course, it was always safe to walk around OB. And many times I walked with friends to the movies at the Strand, even at night. As a group of kids, we would walk to that movie and then walk back, because I can remember being horrified about maybe the creature from the Black Lagoon was going to come up out of the ocean and get us all.
Where was the Strand at?
Downtown on Newport. It was there until just recently. Now it's maybe an antique store or something like that.
I wish it was still here.
Yes, definitely. So many of the old theaters, they can't support business.
Yeah, there's a really old theater. I think it's from the 20s called La Paloma in Encinitas, and it's still open. It's, cash only, like one guy selling popcorn and sodas, and it's great. I love it.
They used to be everywhere. Every little. There was a good one in La Jolla. I don't know if it's still there, called the Cove, the La Jolla Cove.
I think that's still there.
And it was more of an artsy art house kind of scene. We used to go there. Yeah, but we mostly went to the Strand because, I mean, it showed. I forget how much it was. It would be like a quarter for a kid to get in. And you could just walk in any old time and just sit through the movies again,
Yep. So you just stay in there and wait for the next movie.
Yeah, you just sit in there and wait for it to come on. Sometimes you just didn't even know what was going to be playing. You're just like, let's go to the movies. Just go down there. Yeah, there was no R-rated movies or anything like that. It was movies.
Yeah. Movies for everybody.
Yeah, movies for all. Any kind of like art house movie that might have some nudity in it was played at a theater, a different kind of theater. And then eventually, of course, they started having Cinerama, the wraparound theaters, and then 2 screens, and then 4 screens. And that was the death of the independent theater.
Mm-hmm.
Because they couldn't afford the movies anymore. They couldn't afford to buy movies or rent movies that they could show and make enough money. It was too bad, because we really, and parents didn't worry about us going down there. They knew what time the movie got out, what time we'd be home. Parents would call the movie theater all the time. What time does this movie get out? And somebody would answer and tell them.
To know what time to expect you.
Yeah, they knew what time to expect us to come home if we didn't get eaten by the creature.
You are listening to my mom on your new favorite podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to I Partied With Your Mama.
Well, the only other story that I think is interesting is that she was way up, maybe 80 years old, and she never would eat properly. She just didn't eat right. Coffee, cake, and cigarettes. And she found these things she liked called Andy's hot fries. They're like a Cheeto type of thing, but they were so spicy. They were just unbelievably hot. And she was just eating them by the bagful all the time. And she got a terrible stomach ache and kind of thought that maybe she had a gallbladder problem or something. She wouldn't go to the doctor. That's another thing. She would never go to the doctor. And my aunt dragged her in there and they put her in the hospital, and she had an impacted colon and small intestine. Impacted with what? Andy's hot fries. That's what was in there.
That's why nobody's ever heard of them, because they were immediately discontinued.
They still sell them out here.
Oh, they do?
Yeah,
Oh my
they do.
gosh.
I've seen them in the store. Mostly you see them at a convenience store, or
She
like
should
a
have added,
gas station.
yeah, she should have added water to her diet.
Yeah, but she didn't drink water. She only drank coffee and tea and very little else. And she went through a period of time when she drank a lot of alcohol. And if you had any alcohol around, because she came and stayed with us in Tucson when the kids were little, and she came there, I think, between going to my aunt in Jackson Hole, and she had a job with some old lady she was taking care of, and my dad and her were separated again at the time. They were married 60 years and never got a divorce, but they didn't live together the whole time. And she forgot where I was on that story. Oh yeah, she came to visit, and I said, well, you can watch the kids while I'm working, because I had a hair salon and I got I have so many things going on, and I could use a sitter because I was using this lady in the neighborhood, and she was really full. There was too many kids there. She said, okay. So she stays there, and one day I came home early, and she's like in her bedroom, just completely passed out drunk because she drank a whole bottle of brandy, an entire bottle of brandy. And the kids are in the swimming pool, little kids by themselves.
Shit. Oh my
I just
God.
went nuts,
I bet.
I just went absolutely nuts. And I told her, well, that's it. I can't trust you anymore. So you might as well just go ahead and go to Aunt Shirley. I called Aunt Shirley and told her what happened. And she's like, I'll come right down there and get her ass.
Kids, say goodbye to Grandma.
Well, I gotta get something off my chest, man.